to do roll call with no Jane?
I will do roll call. So I'll
call to order.
Okay. I just had this sort of, what am I supposed to do now? Chair Pam Weil.
Here from East Lansing, Michigan.
Vice Chair Chuck Overby.
Here from the blistering cold East Lansing.
Alex Smith.
Here from East Lansing.
Adam DeLay. Oh, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There we go. Here from East Lansing.
Okay, so Commissioner Weil, you have a quorum. All 4 members of the commission are present.
All righty. Will someone move to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Support?
Seconded.
Any discussion, revisions? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving, say aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none. The agenda moves. Approval of the minutes for the January 20th meeting.
Commissioner Weil,
Yes?
if we could confirm, please, who seconded that motion on the minutes or on the agenda, that would be helpful.
That was me, Alex.
Thank you.
All right. Who wants to move the minutes?
I'll move the minutes.
So what's the second? Everybody's got a lot of work to do because we're such a small group. So
Second. There would be a second.
any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor of moving them with no revision, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the minutes, our previous meeting are moved. Do we have any public comment?
We have nobody in the queue at this time.
All right. Passport grant.
Thank you, Pam. We are proposing a Ron.
Just a quick inject, just for next time and for formality, just per the law, per the legal side, include the county on the back end of when you do your introduction. You can do it in any order, but the city name, city, county, any order, it's not a big deal. But I think just we got kind of really, we've been talked to about it several times. So I just want to make sure for the virtual meeting, everything's done.
So
Perfect.
we need to say our city and county. I think that should be okay.
Yeah, because I sit in Clinton, for example. If you sit in Clinton, or it's probably Ingham, but you may sit in another county and still be in East Lansing.
I didn't think about that, huh?
Yep. Yeah, it came up. I only know it because I've been corrected on it. So I just wanted to tell you guys.
Do you want us to add them now or?
Nope. Future reference, just
Okay,
for formality.
Thank you, Councilmember Bacon. So, okay, recreation passport. Oh, just one thing real quickly. I wanted to, before we started in on the recreation passport, I wanted to let the commissioners know that Jane Stone is not here this evening, and her mother passed away late last week, and she's out this week, and she'll be returning next week. So from a procedural standpoint, she takes care of a lot of these things for us, and we're kind of tag teaming today between Wendy and I, and we just let our chair know right at the beginning of this meeting. So we're all just kind of getting ready to do this, and Jane's the one that keeps us in line, and we'll do the best we can. So thank you so much. With respect to the recreation passport, at the last meeting, we talked about perhaps not doing a natural resources trust fund. It was either the last meeting or the meeting before, not doing a natural resources trust fund grant request, but perhaps doing a recreation passport grant request. We're going to introduce you to a project. Wendy's going to introduce you to a project that I think will complement the basketball court project that we discussed with this particular group, and we think that it is a really good project for for the Recreation Passport Grant request. And Wendy will go ahead and brief the commission on where we're at with this project.
Okay, thank you. Justin, if you could scroll to the place in the agenda packet where the attachment starts on this. Super, thank you. As Tim indicated, we're looking at submitting a recreation passport grant this year, and it's for a amenity called a bank shot court, and we're looking at this in Patriarch Park. Next slide. Bank shot court is, description is taken directly from their website. So,
Wendy,
yes,
I think Ron's got a question.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry for my edification and ignorance. Just the nickel version on the passport program on what that.
The Recreation Passport Program is funded through the revenue that's generated when people purchase recreation passport passes to enter state parks. And the revenue from that program is then redistributed to local government and other agencies who might be eligible to use for recreation improvements. And so the Recreation Passport grants tend to be smaller grants than the Natural Resources Trust Fund grants. They are not as cumbersome in completing the application, so it's a little bit easier for especially a lot of the smaller communities out there who might not have the local match or who might have a project that doesn't quite meet Natural Resources Trust Fund parameters, but yet is a very worthy park and recreation improvement. And so there primarily are those two sources that we look to the state for funds with. That is the Recreation Passport and then the Natural Resources Trust Fund program. The Natural Resources Trust Fund program is funded through monies received by the state for lease of mineral rights and lease of public properties. And those projects tend to be our much larger projects. Our maximum grant request with the Natural Resources Trust Fund can be requesting up to $300,000 from the Department of Natural Resources. A Rec Passport grant has a maximum grant amount of $150,000. And both of the grants have a minimum of a 25% local match.
Thank you very much.
Sure. But Tim, was there anything else that would be interesting to raise regarding those two grant sources?
The only sort of clarification that I would make is that it is the revenue that individuals pay through their registration when they register their vehicle. And you can elect to pay the Rec Passport or you can elect not to. And a substantial portion of the revenue does go to state parks, but there is a limited portion that does go to local governments. So, and frankly, this is just as competitive as the Natural Resources Trust Fund, if not more. We were one of the first communities to get a Recreation Passport grant the very first year. And we used it for Fine Park when we did some playground improvements and some other work in Fine Park. We've applied maybe 4 or 5 different times since then, and we have not received it. But if you'll recall, with the basketball court project, we came really close last time. And we think with this component and changing the project up just a little bit, we'll be able to go ahead and be very successful. So
I think I was asking that because as we look at long-term funding, I'll be curious to see what the impacts are on these types of funds from, post-COVID and that kind of thing as we move forward on those types of questions, and just want to become an expert so I can speak intelligently about that when those questions are posed, in opposition perhaps to our funding opportunities. So I'll continue anything around funding that you can educate me on. I'm open and have no ego around it. So just feel free to teach me. So thank you guys.
Thank you. We're going to need that help, I'm quite sure.
Okay, thanks. Bank Shot Court is a game that is most closely compared to basketball, but it is a game of skill and challenge. And players of all ages and abilities move through a course where there are angled or curved, non-conventionally configured backboards. And the goal is to, by standing in each of the different colored circles, to make a basket. And you do that by, banking the basketball off of different aspects of the backboard. There's some stations where you may even have to bank it off of a backboard that's adjacent to the hoop that you want it to go in. And so it's a game of skill and challenge, and it's one that's really non-aggressive and completely inclusionary. It allows participants to play alongside one another as opposed to against each other. And people of a wide range of skills can participate in this game. It reminds me a little bit of, just like pickleball is sort of a less competitive, a little bit of an adjusted version of tennis. This is kind of a similar thing, almost a version of basketball that has been changed to support use by a wide range, people with a wide range of abilities. Now, I am hoping the link here works, but I'm thinking Justin may need to click on that. This is going to take you to a YouTube video that shows you a little bit more about Bank Shot.
Just curious if you can hear the sound, let me know.
Can't right now, no. And it's really kind of slow buffering, it looks like. So this, oh, there we go.
It's a kind of sport where there's no aggression, no body contact, but terrific challenge. It's not strength or gender or agility. It's all what you do with your brain and how you execute it.
That's what playing Bank Shot is all about. The Bank Shot Court is for people with autism, ADHD, and other challenges. And it is designed to have players shoot at an angle thanks to the uniquely shaped backboards and hoops that are 8 feet, 2 feet shorter than regulation.
Rockville has 2 bank shot facilities here and in Montrose Park. It's a good non-competitive way to shoot some baskets and have a little fun.
And these Bank Shot courts help people with disabilities play hoops without any hindrances.
And having facilities like this and hosting events like this certainly illustrates that. People enjoyed it. We'd like to do more of it.
It's basketballs with basketball nets of different heights, backboards of different positions. There's no sense of I have to do better than somebody else. It just shows Rockville as an inclusive city for all.
For more information about Bank Shot, head to bankshot.com.
Thank you, Justin. We are looking at locating one of these courts in Patriarch Park. And when you have a chance, Justin, if you could screen down to the shot of Patriarch Park, that would be helpful too.
Yep, coming up in just a second.
Yep, I figured it would take you a little time to transition. Thank you. What our thoughts are at this point in time is the Bank Shot courts are at their largest 50 foot by 50 foot, which really isn't a very big footprint at all. And so we're thinking that there is likely to be enough room to install one of these in the general area of the basketball courts and the pickleball and tennis courts in Patriarch Park. So this is the current site plan we're operating under with the pickleball, tennis courts, and basketball courts. But you can see there is area on either side of the basketball court currently, as well as, just south of the proposed location for the tennis courts. So we're looking at potentially adjusting this footprint to allow for a bank shot court installation. We don't have estimate of costs at this point in time. That's something that we're working on. The next picture shows a bit of a timeline for you. We are looking at a public input meeting at your next meeting, which is March 17th. You would need to pass a recommendation for approval if you were interested in moving this forward for a grant submission. There would need to be a resolution recommending that, and then we would take it to City Council on Tuesday, March 23rd, with a grant submission on April 1st. We would not hear on the success of this grant until December of this year, and so at the earliest, we would be looking at probably construction in the summer 2023. So are there any questions or thoughts?
Wendy, what do we know about potential interest and use of this facility in other communities?
We don't have a lot of information about that right now. That is one of the things that we're researching. I don't know of one in Michigan at this point in time. So we would, are likely to be one of the first. And we are doing some research where they've been placed in other communities, but I don't have a lot of that information right now.
Yeah, I totally support inclusive recreation. I work social emotional needs of the gifted. I totally want inclusive movement options in our parks. If that's the goal, is this the solution? Like, are there other solutions? Did we look at other options and then pick this one because of some reasons? You know, it seems like I totally like, okay, we want to do an installation that's accessible, that's inclusive, that encourages physical movement, whatever, but like, why this one?
Okay, so we thought that it would complement the basketball court project that we're doing in Patriarch Park. That's why I asked Wendy to do some more work around that particular project or the concept. And we did talk with landscape architects and planners, and they're starting to put that information together. So we thought that it would complement the basketball project. So that's, and then achieve these goals around inclusion and, all the other things that we've been discussing. So that's why we.
Okay, because the thought is, we'll resurface the basketball courts. This kind of construction will be a financially sensible thing, and we're going to have kind of a basket and ball area. Is that?
Right, because the basketball courts are going to be over there, and then you're integrating both the regular basketball and with the inclusive type of project. So we just thought that it would provide that opportunity. The other thing is, I think that it would actually be received well in terms of the funding. And the ideas or the thoughts that we have been talking about in terms of our checklist, those are all things that we would be going over with the commission at our March meeting. And I think we do have a copy of that checklist to remind the commission about that.
Yes, I can share my screen here. And then I think I saw,
It was
did
me.
I share, Justin, or did you share?
I did.
Okay. And then Ron, I think you had a question, or at least your hand was up.
Yeah, comment and a question. I think it makes sense kind of vertically. It's reminding me of kind of a pool to a splash pad kind of thing with the basketball area. That's how it's kind of shaken out in my brain. It looks really kind of smart vertically. And then is Bank Shot, my question would be, is Bank Shot, is that a name brand? Is that proprietary? Is that something, are there competitive versions of Bank Shot, or is that just, that's what the game's called? That would be my only kind of technical questions.
That's a good question, and that's one of the things that we're going to be looking into over the course of the next 30 days. You know, like do you have to go to Bank Shot, or can you go to like Miracle Recreation Equipment or Game Time or Sinclair Recreation or something of that nature?
Okay. Seems really cool. I kind of want to play this. I don't know why. It looks fun.
Well, I'm still trying to understand the issue of, do we think that there's a need, and would people use it? I don't have an opinion. I recognize that there's lots of interest in basketball. Does that translate to this or not? And so that's really my question.
Right, which is one of those things. I don't think that we can give you a good answer today. That's something that we can work on between now and March. And I don't think that we're married to this concept either. I think it's just one of those things that.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just throwing out things.
Wow, this is starting to meet. This is one thing that's starting to meet the things that we've been talking about in terms of being more inclusive and bringing more of the community in our programs and things of that nature. So, and it would complement an existing project. So that's kind of where we're at. So.
I've got one more question. Do we have any concern about density? So I know that there's pickleball tournaments that turn out quite a number of people. And are we worried that maybe somebody will book this Bank Shot, maybe have an event, because that's a thing. So if we build, I know there's a number of organizations in the area that take kids out on recreational events, that it may be, so have we thought about that, if we could have competing bookings, or will we be able to be doing too busy things at both places? That's right. That would be my only concern.
So yeah, with the pickleball folks, if they have it outside of their regular use, if they did a tournament, that would be a scheduled event. Okay. Sure,
but I'm just saying, if we get, like, imagine a future where they're all super successful. And we definitely, when we had the pickleball conversations, they talked about, the tournaments really are successful, and it really can be a economic good for a town to have it. And sure. And then we've kind of built a nice, kind of generous, conducive to that sort of usage. Anyway, I'm throwing them all out there.
Yeah, those are all very good. Some of those we'll be able to probably get some answers to by the time we come back in March, and some of them it's going to be, well, we'll see.
Right, and it may be, this is kind of for women, it may just be something you think about, maybe there's twice as much space between them, or, just, I would say we plan for it being popular, because I think as COVID winds down, knock on wood, we're going to have an explosion of people booking things. And, I'm just saying.
Right. That could lead into a whole other conversation about some things we're looking at with Patriarch Park in terms of being more, for lack of a better term, interactive or proactive in terms of even staffing the Patriarch Park in the evenings and weekends, because of how busy we can envision that park. I mean, it already is busy. And when we had the little pickleball soccer tennis thing, disagreement last year, we had that, we started scheduling some staff at the park on weekends, and that worked out really well. But we can envision stepping that up quite a bit.
Yeah, so that's what I'm just saying. We design with that kind of super active, busy future in mind. Can't wait.
Right.
I had a question. Would this include, this recreation passport grant request, would this also include the funding for the resurfacing of the basketball courts in addition to the bank shot?
What we're hoping to do, and we'll find out more over the course of the next couple, 3 or 4 weeks or couple more months anyway, is, well, what we're hoping is get the basketball court in when we do the pickleball, and then have this designed in and add that perhaps a year later.
So because if I remember correctly, we have a grant approval for the pickleball, but the resurfacing under the recreation passport had gotten denied last year. The issue being, among other things, that we had gotten a grant so soon before, and that counts against you. So I understand we're thinking about doing the resurfacing next year. Is the funding for that, is the idea to say that this grant request is to do resurfacing next year and the bank shot in 23, or does the resurfacing come from a different pot?
Yeah, the resurfacing will come from a different pot. We will be requesting income tax revenue. Using our portion of income tax revenue in 2022, but get that done at the same time we do the pickleball court.
Got it. Okay. Just trying to figure out where the different pieces.
Good questions. These are all very good questions.
All right. Anything else on the passport grant? Let's move on to the fiscal year 2021.
Okay, if you recall at the last meeting, we kind of went over and said this is what our schedule for the budget is, and we would come and give the commission an update on the fiscal year 2021 year-end estimate, and then at your March meeting, we would come back in and look at the Parks and Recreation Fund request for fiscal year 2022, and at the April meeting, we would come back in and look at the capital projects budget request for fiscal year 2022. So tonight I've got a brief presentation with respect to the year-end estimates. Justin, I think you can bring that up. Thank you. Okay. So this is the same format that you'll see when we will prepare, when we bring in the 2022 budget, with the exception that you don't have the 2022 column here. The fiscal year 21 was a tricky year, okay? There's no question about it. It started out with the COVID situation, and you can see the middle column is what we had as our amended or approved budget, if you will, for fiscal year 2021, which on the revenue side included about 4.5 million in revenue, and of course 4.5 million matched in expenses. And that would have been our good budget for the year. As you can see, if you look at the column on the left, the fiscal year 20 actual budget came in far less than 4.5, which is our 21 request, but the 21 request is actual, or approved budget was much closer to this 21 budget. So you can see that's down considerably. And then our year-end estimate for revenue is down even more than last year. So, and substantial compared to what we're accustomed to spending on an annual basis, which, like I said, is what the middle column actually typically represents.
I got a question, Tim.
Sure.
So the year-end estimate column,
Right.
That's for 2021?
That's for the year that we're in right now, yes.
Which is 2021.
Right.
And so we expect at the end of December this year to have the $300 is the estimate for the intergovernmental
This would
revenue?
be the year-end estimate for fiscal year 21 is July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. Okay.
Oh, we got the the fiscal year June.
So it's a fiscal year
okay.
year-end estimate. And we're right now in the process of putting together our budget for fiscal year 2022, which will start on July 1st. But this is what we're estimating between July 1st of 2020 and June 30th of 2021. So our intergovernmental revenue is where I'll start. And that is typically intergovernmental revenue is revenues that we'll get from different grant sources that might come in. One example would be the hotel motel tax that we get for like the Jazz Festival or the, like the Jazz Festival as an example. So not necessarily projecting that we're going to get that in fiscal year 21. Our charges for services, that's a substantial reduction. That, of course, is where we do revenues associated with that are activity registrations, admissions to our various facilities, our pass sales, concession sales, merchandise. And as you can see, our budget, because when we prepared our budget, it was pre-COVID, we were expecting perhaps as much as 1.8 million in charges for services, and actual revenue that we're, for this fiscal year that we're projecting now is only in $348,000 for the full fiscal year, which is what, a $1.3 million reduction in charges for services, because we're not operating, we didn't operate for a substantial portion, and we are operating on limited participation and all of those types of things right now. Rental income is a very similar type of thing. Rental income being income that we charge, like when individuals make a reservation for the Hannah Community Center. One area that the rental income is not affected is our farmers market vendors, because we did have pretty much 100% participation in farmers market. But our rental income for the community center substantially down, perhaps 50% of what we would historically or what we originally projected. Our community support revenues, that's revenue typically from sponsorships, fundraising, donations. Examples include like the Jazz Festival, where we get sponsorships, or the All of Us Express Children's Theater, where the nonprofit organization that we work with does fundraising as well as grant writing and things of that nature. So the other financing, interest we didn't have any interest because we had very little fund balance, like a $50,000 fund balance this year. And other financing sources, that is the general fund transfer to the Parks and Recreation Fund, which is scheduled to be at 2.1 million. I'll get back to that in just a few minutes. On the expenditure side, our personnel services are down substantially, obviously, because we're closed. We did keep all of our full-time staff, folks. We haven't removed any full-time staff from our department. Although, if you recall, this past spring and summer, and a little bit into the fall, our staff, probably 85% of our staff did go on a work share program that was available through the state of Michigan, which ended up saving us a substantial amount of dollars. And of course, our contingent part-time staff folks, we simply either, some of them were laid off, or if they were a seasonal staff person, they just didn't get hired. So as you can see, that's a substantial dollar savings with respect to the personnel services that we experienced through this fiscal year, to the tune of what, $500,000, I believe, that we did not spend on personnel services. Operating costs, given the current budget cycle, is a similar type of situation. Instead of spending about 2.3 million for all of the associated operating costs for operating our programs, our facilities, our events, and what have you, we were forecasting that our year-end expense is going to be approximately $1.6 million, which represents a reduction in expenses of around $750,000, I think is what it ended up being. So as you can see, revenue down substantially, expenses down substantially, but we're still going to be required to have a significant additional contribution or transfer, if you will, from the city's general fund. And we've been visiting with the finance director about that. And we're estimating at this point in time, as you go to the statement of fund balance, we're estimating at this point in time, we came into the fiscal year with a $52,000 fund balance, operating deficit of more expenses to revenues in the $500,000 range. So a minimum of about $448,000 estimated fund to get to an estimated fund balance at June 20 or June 30th. So what that does is that it takes that $2,152,000 general fund transfer and it increases it by about $500,000 is what we're forecasting at this point in time. Our finance director is right now forecasted before we prepared this about $400,000. So that's still something that we need to work on. But as you can see, the impacts are certainly significant on our organization with respect to the COVID pandemic. Now, I do want to say at the citywide level, we're an example of a department that relies significantly amount of our revenue comes from the user fees and charges and the rental reservation income. And we rely on that far more than many of the other departments in the city organization. Another example of a department that's similar to us, and probably the only other one in the city organization at this time, is the parking department, right? And so the parking department is experiencing significant revenue losses also. So, and they have a combination of full-time regular staff as well as contingent part-time staff that they have been working with throughout the whole year. But I want to go to the next table if we can, and I can give you a little bit different view on this in terms of what we look like in terms of our revenue on a program area by program area basis. So as you'll see, I'll go straight to the bottom, and those numbers at the bottom add up to be very similar or are the same as on the front page. But this is looking at it from a program area by program area standpoint. So our revenues are down in every category, right? 80,000 from 107,000 as projected for soccer complex, down from 420,000 to $300 in the aquatic center because we didn't open the aquatic center last year, and we're not planning to open it this year. Guest services revenue down dramatically from the 500,000 to the 189,000. Swim pool revenues. Now, one of the things for the Hannah swim pool is that is essentially rental revenue that's down and learn to swim program revenue. The lap swim use, if you will, is identified in the guest services revenue for the swimming pool. And then the Hannah building, this is a $40,000 transfer from the Parks Capital Fund for some infrastructure related work that we've got planned to do this current year. The Jazz Festival revenue, typically in about the $118,000 range, down to $52,000, which actually is really pretty good. We didn't have the Jazz Festival last June, and Justin could perhaps tell you better than I can, but folks still want that Jazz Festival, and we said we had to postpone it, and they said, well, in a lot of cases here, you can still have money prepare for next year, and they are still making contributions for that. So we're pretty confident that when we do the next Jazz Festival, the revenue will be there. Arts planning and administration, that's because we're not selling any art in the art gallery. Community events, I mentioned earlier, the farmers market revenue is still there. So that revenue actually is already in for the most part. School-age childcare, we kept our remote learning program and school-age childcare in a small version of the B&A program going throughout the whole time of the pandemic. But as you can see, that is a very robust program in terms of the before and after school revenue generating at each of the elementary schools and what have you. So this is a substantial revenue decline. Recreation and arts offerings are down, obviously. Athletics and softball complex are down. Both in the case of recreation and arts and the athletics and softball complex. We're anticipating a rebound a little bit as we look towards the spring and the summer of this year, because we're still planning to offer those the programs that we would historically have offered in the past. But we're not anticipating 100% attendance. We're still anticipating a reduction in attendance. The children's theater program, again, similar type of situation. We've been able to go ahead and do some virtual shows and some classes and what have you, but still revenue down substantially as compared to what we're accustomed to. And then the transfer from the general fund, as talked about before. So that's kind of what the revenue situation looks like. And then the next table shows the expenditure situation, and it's just sort of everything that I just said sort of mirrors all of that, what we talked about with respect to the revenue. So the bottom line here is about $500,000 additional general fund transfer that we're going to be requesting. And we've done a lot in terms of reducing our expenses, reducing our, for personnel, reducing our expenses for operating to try to accommodate. But with our reliance on revenue, we just, from fees and charges, we just weren't able to keep up. So that's going to be our story as we look into putting together our year-end estimates and presenting the information to City Council. And then we expect the story will improve as we look towards fiscal year 22. But it's still going to be, we're not going to be 100% rebounding. We'll have a better feel for that when we come in and show you where we're at our March meeting. So I know, I recognize that's an awful lot of information, so thank you. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Tim, I just have a comment. I appreciate the information and all your hard work. It's a sobering look at the effect of the pandemic on the community and the community services. And I'm pleased that you've been able to maintain the services and the quality of those services that we have.
Well, we've had support from the city manager's office. We've had support from the community. We've had support from City Council. There will be, we fully anticipate there's going to be some pushback from our community when they see the type of additional transfer that we're having to rely on. But I think our history, our background demonstrates and shows that, you know, we do as best as we can to try to keep our fees and charges at a point where we're offsetting a substantial portion of our recreation offerings. And we'll continue to try to share that information as we work our way through the budget process. So thank you, Chuck.
I was just going to say, you know, I always look at budgeting as sort of very simply as like you have what comes in and then you have what you can spend, your revenue and your expenses. And it looks like, you know, through the work that you've done, you've been able to figure out a way to reduce the expenses by, it looks like about 1.3 somewhere in there $1 million over the course of last year. And just unfortunately, like you said, just given the nature of the department's reliance on fees for services, that's still not enough. And so I think the fact that you're, you know, if the total shortfall is close to 2 million, or if you take the 1.3 and the 500, and you're saying, okay, we were able to cut 2/3 of what the deficit is. I think asking for that remaining third is not necessarily unreasonable in terms of a transfer. The one question I had is and I'm not asking to go through all of them, but just on some of the expenses, if maybe you could touch on some of them. Like I know, so like for the aquatic center, I know that it looks like there's still 177. Does that involve some of the capital improvements we talked about previously at all?
Sure, I can go through that. I'm happy to do that. I just didn't know how much I'd be boring.
Yeah, I don't expect it, but maybe just because it's like, okay, I see, like, okay, the Jazz Festival still has 11,000, and if it was canceled, is that just sort of like certain things or just little stuff? If you maybe just touch on some of it, just so I don't expect another run through. So
yeah, that's a good point. We can certainly do that. The aquatic center, there's $177,220. Some of that is it's the cost of having the space out there. Okay. The capital improvements will come in on a different budget, but there were some things that we did choose to do still. For example, some maintenance work for our boiler system and for our filtration system and things of that nature. We still are running limited, but we still have utility costs and things of that nature out there. We have a portion of our full-time staff, of one full-time staff person's salary that's involved with that too. So we have expenses of that nature, and that's kind of where the cost for this year, for the year end of this year came in. And like I said, they're more maintenance-oriented expenses, basic utility costs. So did that answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay, with respect to the Jazz Festival, there again, that's a portion of a full-time staff position. So you still have that expense for that staff position. A couple of things that, when you say that, I forgot, that Alex and you, Adam, are both, quite new to the commission for just a minute. But if you look at another one that I might want to bring up is what's called the Respite Center Agreement. That's what used to be what we called Alpha program years ago, active living for adults. Then we entered into a contract with Lap Respite Center, and they offered adult daycare services at Valley Court. Not daycare, adult day services at Valley Court on a contract basis for us. And what we agreed to do is offer them the use of the Valley Court Community Center without charge, and we even had made a modest contribution towards the operation of the Lap Respite Center program. So that's one example of where of a program that we continue to be able to have because of a partnership with another agency. School-age childcare, as I indicated, is a robust program, right? But we still offered it to about 30-some families throughout the calendar year this year. And we had about the same number of families that did summer camp. But it's a staff-intensive program, and you have 2 full-time staff that are overseeing the work. So you can see that we still spent about $364,000, or we plan to spend about $364,000. We're only going to be able to match it this year with about $130,000 in revenue, which for us, I'll just be candid with this particular program. We're accustomed to generating with this program. If you look at the budget, close to $700,000 a year in revenue off of this program, and then matching it with $554,000 in expenses. So if there's an area where we have a program that typically generates a positive variance, it's historically that school-age childcare. We made the decision with the support of city administration and I believe city council that if we could still offer the opportunity for the parents of about 30 children to still be active and in the, be able to go to their jobs, that it was important for us to go ahead and do that. So that's kind of where we're at with the child care program. So I did a lot of, I did more than what you wanted me to do, but I added a couple of things to that. So
Hey, that's always great. The last question I had was, I was just thinking about the underground marketplace that the city is doing.
Yes.
Is that incorporated in this under community events, and maybe some of the other things that the city has been trying to do around COVID to still sort of bring in community events?
Good question. The underground market we are providing the staffing for the underground market. Our market manager, Carla Forrest Hewitt, is a certified market manager, and she is the lead staff person for the actual implementation of the market, and actually Justin supervises her. So we're actually providing the staffing for that. And then Dee Carruthers from our aquatic staff and some of the lifeguard staff are supplementing that staffing too. The good news for us with respect to that is that's not in here. That expense is being covered through, I think, the downtown management. I understand that seemed to go pretty well this past weekend. I wasn't out there. I will admit that I was a little bit anxious, more than a little bit anxious, when I was sending staff out into a 30-degree parking lot for 4 hours. But it seemed to have turned out all right. I don't know if Justin wants to chime in. It seemed to have turned out all right. So.
Yeah, overall, our first experience in the space was wonderful. We are really grateful to the Downtown Development Authority for providing the funding to be able to bring that experience to downtown. And it was definitely more pleasant in the space than I initially expected looking at the weather forecast. Fortunately, being underground, being protected from the wind made a significant difference on the conditions. And all of the vendors that I communicated with expressed significant appreciation for the space. Many of them sold out. There was a large portion of the community came out to support the event. So overall, really positive experience. Looking forward to 6 more of them on a mostly bi-weekly basis moving forward.
I was able to attend this weekend and overspend on things, and yeah, it was. I just being. I think it's maybe 10 degrees warmer, and then you're almost perfect down there. It was a little cold. It kind of made you move a little quicker than you might have wanted to, but it wasn't unbearable. But I'm thinking maybe, if we're getting into this warmer weather, I think it will be really attractive. But it was quite, the traffic was pretty steady. I came mid-afternoon around noon, and probably was around for maybe an hour in the downtown. So it was cool. Very, very well done.
We're hoping to have even more vendors.
The leadership staff folks on that. This is kind of a brainchild of the planning and community development staff. And this is an example of where our staff is working closely with staff from another department. And I will admit that I was more than a little bit anxious, and I had some interesting conversations with the planning staff the last few days, because I was worried about our staff, but it seems to have worked out just fine. And I think it's going to get much better, obviously.
Tim?
Yeah.
And I also wanted to take a moment when we're looking at our department and our staffing and program offerings over the course of COVID. I think an important thing to bring up is one of the things we've done with our staff is we have used our staff in a support capacity for a lot of different departments. And that isn't necessarily reflected in those numbers. We provided staffing for when City Hall was open and they were doing the health screenings. We provided the staffing for that. We have Justin and several of our other staff who provide support for the online meetings. And those are the two things that come to my mind, but I know there's other areas. So we've basically, the staff that we did have, and especially our full-time staff, when they had those programming responsibilities and other responsibilities cut way back, we backfilled by offering those resources to other areas of the organization. And I think that has been a great service that we've provided, and our staff have all stepped up with a willingness to do that. So I think that's an important point.
A couple other examples are the staff that did the I guess you could call it concierge service, or if you will, the cleaning and what have you for the outdoor market that we had all summer, supporting the
ambassador program, Tim.
Pardon?
Was that called the ambassador program?
The ambassador program was the mask program, and our staff provided we provided the staff for that, and we provided the staff for, let's say that they were cleaning up the picnic tables in downtown.
Yeah. Yeah.
The outdoor dining.
Right. So that's a couple more of examples where, and actually that worked out really good. You have people that some of them we had already hired to work at the water park, and then of course we didn't open the water park, so we provided them all an alternative, and some of them jumped on it. So, and those were all caught. And Wendy said that's not reflected in the budget because that was DDA or DMB or one of those funding sources picked the cost up for that. So, but thank you. Good questions. That's all I have with the year-end estimate right now.
Okay, any more comments? Evergreen Utilities Improvement Project?
Okay, this was a late add to your agenda, and we apologize for that. We've received some more updated communications in the last few days, and so we wanted to make sure to bring that to your attention. Beginning next week, there is going to be a pretty substantial utilities project taking place along Evergreen and Valley Court. And Justin, if you have the opportunity maybe to scroll down to where one of the maps are, it doesn't really matter. I can use that for descriptions. But basically what's happening is along Evergreen and Valley Court, as you can see here, any of the highlighted areas, we will be looking at replacing the water main as well as the storm sewer. This project, in order to do that work, there are going to be sections of the road that will be removed on a short-term basis. And then the grade of the road needs to be adjusted and raised in order to get adequate coverage for the utilities that are underground. If you scroll down a little bit, Justin, let's see if there's another right here. This shows you the line in red on this picture is a combined sewer that was already installed as part of the Abbott development and the graduate development. The project that is starting next week will be replacement of the combined sewer and water main shown in pink and blue on here. So this is really a pretty substantial utility improvement or upgrade. If you could scroll down to the next sheet. What this shows you is a master plan for the project. And one of the key things that's happening here is currently you can drive along Valley Court and turn to the north and head up Evergreen. That section of roadway between Valley Court and Evergreen is going to be removed and not replaced. So what we'll do is Valley Court, thank you, Justin, yes, right there. Valley Court will be extended from Abbott all the way over to, oh, I'm sorry, I have the wrong road name. Abbott will be extended all the way from, I've got it, still have it wrong. I'm getting there. Third try is a charm. Albert Avenue will be extended from Abbott Road to Valley Court Drive. So that'll be a straight, it'll kind of come straight through there and then dead end into Valley Court Drive. Then you'll be able to head east or west on Valley Court Drive to head up towards Evergreen and the subdivision there, or to the west and head towards Delta to get out to Grand River Avenue. But that connection between Albert and Valley Court, or Albert and Delta, will be removed. Oh, I'm messing this up like crazy. I apologize. Do people understand what I've just said? Because I've used a lot of interchangeable street names inappropriately.
I get confused about the street names down there too.
Okay. So if you'll scroll to the next map there, Justin. One of the things that I wanted to point out to everybody is there will be a bit of an impact in Valley Court Park. And that is, let's see, no, a little further.
Sorry, the file's so big it's being slow.
I know those drawings are really large. But I can verbally describe it as we wait for this to process for us. Because the intersection of Valley Court, where Valley Court turns and becomes Evergreen, that location, the roadway has to be raised between 3 and 4 feet. So there will be some grading that takes place on a temporary basis in Valley Court Park, in the very southeast corner of the park. Yep, maybe the next one, I think, and I know it's really slow. What will happen is the grade will be feathered back into the existing grade and then reseeded. So once the work is completed, it won't look a whole lot different other than the road will be higher than it is currently. There are 2 trees that are going to need to be removed, and those will be replaced. And we'll have the ability to have some input into the location as well as the tree species on those. Is it going to let you go to the next map yet, Justin? Really, really slowly. Okay, you can see the area that I'm talking about here. It's basically where you see the little Y. On the north side of that is Valley Court Park. And that's where they'll be doing some grading and there'll be some temporary impact to the park. So we wanted to share this project with you, one, because it's a big project and one we're really excited about as a city. It's a utility improvement in this area that's been needed for years. But we also wanted to describe it to you from the standpoint of there will be at least a short-term impact to this corner of Valley Court Park.
When will this start?
The project is going to start actually next week. The portion that is, if you can scroll up a little bit, a couple of sheets up, Justin, there's a colorful map that gives the staging a little bit.
Yep, 1 second.
Yeah, but I believe it's anticipated to probably take throughout the majority of the summer before it's completed, because they're removing sections of roadway and then having to put some back in. They're also needing to remove some sections of sidewalk, and they'll have to do it in stages to ensure that there is the ability for traffic to move through. How you get through there will change in each stage, but that traffic flow will be maintained. So that's my initial response to that. Yes, there you go. The removal of the parking lot that is just north of People's Church will begin next week. And then it looks like the first phase of road removal begins at the beginning of March, so in probably about 3 weeks. And that's removal of the section of evergreen that will not be replaced. And then they will move to removing and regrading the section of evergreen that will remain, which is sort of the buff colored on there. And then the final stage is doing the parking that is in between Evergreen and Abbott. And I think then they come back in and reinstall Abbott Road, or I'm sorry, Albert. So these are the road closure plan here. This is looking like just a couple of months. It would be wonderful if that's all it took the project, but I think it's going to be longer than that. Any other questions?
This is a big deal, Wendy. There's going to be a lot going on in that area for the next several months.
There really is. And this information is uploaded on the website where you find the agenda. So I would encourage you to feel free to look that over. But this is a big project and it's really going to impact that area. But it's needed. The improvement of the utilities and increasing the capacity of the storm drains, as well as the ability to provide water north and south is really big in this area.
Great news. Was there consultation with you guys on I know all the sensitive negotiation going on there with the lot in MSU FCU and kind of in front of that project and behind it and around it and everything that's kind of going on right now? Is everybody coordinated with you guys on those proposals to, kind of break this impasse on the MSU FCU project?
We are aware of everything that is going on in the area. The staff does a good job of communicating amongst ourselves. We're not very involved in the MSU project that is primarily planning, and I think some with Department of Public Works as well. But we get very good communication from the DPW and planning department when it comes to projects and those sorts of things.
Okay, cool. Because I know there's some sensitive areas behind there that they were discussing, making some pretty big moves to make this project go. So I didn't know if they were going to collide with what was going on. I always assume everyone's communicating, but I know sometimes they're not. So yeah.
Well, and we all do our best, and generally we're successful, but sometimes we fall down in that area as well. Every once in a while something will happen and Tim or I'll talk to each other and we'll be like, what's going on? But generally we're kept in the loop.
Perfect.
Okay, so staff communications, resolution for naming public properties.
Oh, yeah, at your last meeting, you did the recommendation to City Council, and following that, I drafted a letter and it was reviewed and approved and made some revisions by Chair Pam Weil, and we forwarded on to City Council and to the City Manager's office with the chair's signature. So that's been moved on to City Council and to the City Manager's office. And I'm not sure what they will do. The next step would be I'm guessing would be to get it on their agenda, probably at a discussion only meeting, or if they're ready to just go ahead and approve it, put it on a regular meeting and do an approval. So I will keep the commission updated on how that moves forward.
Yeah, we received it. I'm assuming it may even arrive on the consent agenda and just kind of, it seems very straightforward. And maybe, from there, it seems like good guidance. So we got a preview to it already. So
I'm willing to go or to attend the meeting if there's a reason for that, but it sounds like at this point it's relatively pro forma and it's going to move quickly and
so I say, but we'll see.
Right. We did hear that.
Yeah, very straightforward.
If something develops and there is a need for me to help out, I'm glad to do that.
Thank you.
All right. Commissioner Communications, Chuck, do you have anything?
Nothing more. Thank you.
Alex?
Just kind of echo what Chuck mentioned earlier, just the stark in your face reminder of all that has gone on in the past year when looking at the budget, and just reflecting on all of the the comfort that I hope many people found in parks. I know I did, and hopefully that is part of the psyche and the realization that a lot of folks have as they think about this past year. And one of the things that was truly helpful, in a good place to go along the way. That's kind of the emotional aspect of this. I'm thinking and reflecting on for sure.
Adam, do you have something?
I'm going to punt to Ron, to Councilmember Bacon on that, but we do have an update, unless you want me to kind of fill in, but
yeah, you can run with it. It's
okay.
Yeah.
So the council member and I have been having a couple of meetings with Elaine Hardy to talk about the idea that I had kind of brought to you guys a while back regarding the historical marker for the house on Bessemer that belonged to Dr. Green. Where we are at in that process right now is we've gotten I've got the form. I'm starting to fill out the application. I've had some conversations with the State Historic Preservation Office. One of the things that the state had recommended was to also go for a National Register of Historic Places designation through the U.S. Department of the Interior. So we talked about we're going to go for that as well. So ultimately the site would have the National Register of Historic Places as well as the historical marker, which we're looking at putting across the street on Bessemer with that where there's city-owned green space. So right now it's a matter of filling out the paperwork, getting it into the state, and then they'll review it. And then it's sort of a very back and forth process is what I've been led to understand, where they'll say, hey, we got your paperwork. This is where we think, this is blah, blah, blah. And so I think the other piece of this now, when I was speaking with folks yesterday, is to start kind of going to the interested parties that may want to, have a part of that discussion, whether it be the neighborhood associations or other folks. And I think one of the things that we had talked about coming to the commission for was some sort of letter of support for what we're trying to do on that property. So I think that that's something that maybe we would be looking in terms of the timeline of when we're going to start meeting with folks and getting these applications in, maybe something that we could look at discussing or formalizing when we meet next month.
And I did reach out to the Pinecrest Neighborhood Association, and I copied back to you, Adam and Elaine, and they said, come on down, they sent their virtual meeting schedule out so we can coordinate around that. And just more broadly, it's a really broad project around Dr. Green, including scope around his writings, the library, the school board, and some things around school namings and dedication. That's kind of a really broad focus around him is what probably the preeminent civil rights icon for this area region, really. And we want to capture it because he's aging. And as we can see quickly, we're losing all the icons kind of, it's seeming weekly at this point. So that's where our urgency is coming from, not to do anything shabbily or or rushed, but we're just kind of at that point with these icons now. So we're trying to be thorough but expedient. So
Right, I might suggest that we run some things simultaneously and talk about what we might do with that green space in at the same time that we're moving, especially a federal designation forward. I don't know what that timeline is like, but also when talking to neighbors, and we're wide open right now, but getting a feel for what they would envision, feel comfortable with in how we deal with that space.
Yeah, the what we're proposing would be a very, very small footprint, because I know that the intent of that area is for it to remain a green space. And personally, that's what I would want, because I enjoy sipping my coffee and looking out at it every morning. And you have Northern Tier Trail that runs through there. When I had initially talked to Tim about this idea, we're talking about something that's across the street from the house on Bessemer, one of the standard green historical markers that I'm sure everyone here has seen in one place or another, and maybe nothing more than just backfilling the area, the part of that, because the problem is you have the street and then it slopes down pretty significantly if you go down the street there, and they're basically just maybe leveling some of that off, putting the marker in, maybe some benches, and then maybe some additional foliage, because where it lines up, most of that side of Bessemer, there's only 2 properties on that green space, residential properties, but this comes fairly close to one of those. And I had spoken with my neighbor, and they didn't have concern with it so long as the footprint was kept relatively small, and any foliage and any trees or anything like that that would need to get removed would be replaced, or if they could even put in an additional tree or two to make sure that they have the privacy that they maintain on the property. So we're talking about a fairly small footprint to be able to do the historical recognition, small development to use the space a little better, but then also respecting the idea that that's an area or a space that's intended to be very natural.
Sure. I just think that's something that we don't need to wait on everything. We can be starting something, moving that forward, and I hope
what we need is dirt, because it needs to be. And I can tell you, it shouldn't be too hard for the DPW to do that, because they just there was a water main break in front of my house last week, so they brought a dump truck out and dumped a bunch right there.
All right.
Yeah, you can see it right there. That's perfect.
Nice.
Yeah, so I talked to the property owner at 140. So where this would be, you can see there's unfortunately, we put it across the street, and of course, the only one of 2 or 3 properties there is right next to him. But the way it shakes out, it shouldn't be a concern, and it's such a small development, so long his view is, so long as they're not putting in like, a pavilion and a jungle gym and things like that for a development, that something of this scope and especially the subject matter, they were supportive of. And the homeowner, I think I've said before, is just absolutely over the moon. They love this idea. They went to MSU when Dr. Green was here, and they're just they had no idea the significance of the property they lived in, so they're over the moon about it.
Adam, which property is yours?
215, right to the left there. That's where I'm coming to you from right now.
Right. So whatever support you need, Adam and Ron, from the commission, you just need to let us know, and we'll be glad to weigh in.
yeah, we assumed that we were going to just volunteer you what we needed going forward.
Right.
We can get some nice pictures. I know that. Some mock-ups. All right.
And can I piggyback off Adam, because I'm going to jump off here, but I just want to thank Tim for his time and trying to get us back to a full boat here. We have interviewed some candidates, and we'll interview some more next week as we attempt to, get a few more people into the fold. And there's some really neat people coming through the pipe with some diverse backgrounds. It should be a cool mix, to add to it. This is a really good group. We don't want to disrupt the apple cart, but that friction and some of that stuff should make some really creative ideas. So there are a lot of it. They're very different. So we'll see how it turns out. We'll keep you posted, but we are in process to get you back to a full boat. So
is that all your comments, just for commissioner comments?
That's it for me. And I'm going to bounce on you guys, but thank you guys for everything. It's amazing.
And I've gotten nothing that I didn't send. I sent the link to dialogue. I suggest everybody sign up for it. Get the email automatically of city updates. And I put in the chat, there's the Quiet Adventure Symposium going on, and it's paddling. It's like the motor-free lake, hiking, biking, non-motorized recreation. It's kind of cool. A lot of canoeing and paddling. And that's all I've got. Anybody have anything else before we close the meeting? All right, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you.
Have a good month, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.